In the winter of 1237, the Russian principalities faced the greatest threat in their history. Batu, the grandson of Genghis Khan, had assembled a massive army that, according to medieval chronicles, numbered in the hundreds of thousands of horsemen. The exact number remains debated. Some Russian and European chroniclers claim up to 600,000 warriors, while modern historians, aware of the logistical constraints of the time, suggest more realistic figures, perhaps between 30,000 and 50,000. Even so, it was a colossal force, capable of destroying any city in its path. The campaign began against Ryasan. The resistance was valiant, but after a 3-day siege, the city was reduced to ashes. Then Vladimir fell within just 4 days, and shortly afterward, Moscow, still merely a fortified village, burned as a warning to all. Accounts from chroniclers of the era, such as the Laurentian Chronicle, describe systematic devastation, villages destroyed, churches looted, peasants enslaved. Prince Yuri of Vladimir's forces attempted to fight at the Sit River, but their troops were scattered, and the Mongol cavalry, incredibly fast, turned it into a total disaster. Yuri died in battle, and his head was taken as a trophy by Batu. Up to this point, everything followed the usual pattern of Mongol conquest: swift campaigns, short sieges, and calculated terror to force submission. But not all cities reacted the same. Some offered unexpected resistance, which delayed the offensive and wore down the invaders, including a small fortress called Kozel'sk. Kozel'sk was neither a capital nor a major trade hub, just a tiny settlement of a few thousand people. Yet its location was strategically important, situated between the Gizdra and Dugna rivers, in a region of hills and swamps that acted as natural defenses. For the Mongols, accustomed to surrounding enemies on open ground, this terrain presented a genuine challenge, a massive obstacle. Beyond strategic significance, there was a thirst for revenge. 15 years earlier, during the Kalka River campaign in 1223, a prince from Kozel'sk had participated in the execution of Mongol envoys, an unforgivable act in their eyes. Even though that prince had long been dead, the Mongols believed the guilt was inherited by blood and land. By their logic, the entire population had to pay. This tradition is corroborated by several Russian sources, such as the Ipatiev Chronicle, and is mentioned elsewhere as well. Surprisingly, in 1238, the city was not led by a seasoned prince or experienced commander, but by a 12-year-old boy named Vasily, his son or grandson. The genealogy of the ruling Cherchennigov family is somewhat unclear. Despite his youth, the people accepted him as their legitimate leader. The choice to resist was not his alone. It was a communal decision made by citizens who understood exactly what opening the gates to the invaders would mean: slavery for some, death for others. According to the chronicles, the city council resolved to fight to the end. When Batu arrived at the walls, he offered the customary terms: surrender in exchange for mercy. Kozel'sk refused. From that moment, a siege began unlike any other. What took days in other cities stretched into weeks here. The Mongols, usually swift and devastating, found themselves stuck in hostile terrain, facing determined defenders. The defenders refused to yield. The initial attacks were straightforward: catapults hurling stones and troops attempting to scale the walls. But the uneven terrain caused most projectiles to miss, and the spring rains turned the ground to mud. Each assault left behind numerous Mongol casualties, a fact even acknowledged by contemporary sources, though they do not provide exact numbers. The resistance was so remarkable that even Mongol chroniclers, typically minimizing their defeats, recorded it. Kozel'sk, its ominous name meaning the city of evil, became an unexpected stronghold in the spring of 1238. Perched on a hill surrounded by rivers and swamps, The city seemed naturally fortified. The thawing waters transformed it into an island fortress. For the Mongols, experts in surrounding and destroying cities on open plains, this landscape posed a formidable challenge. They could only attack from the northwest, while the other approaches remained protected by currents and marshes. Batu, growing impatient, resorted to his standard tactics. He ordered siege towers built and catapults deployed. But damp conditions spoiled the shots, and the uneven hills deflected the stones. Russian chroniclers describe failed assaults and piles of Mongol casualties in front of the palisades. Though the numbers are unclear, even sources outside Rus acknowledged the unusually costly resistance. The defense was led by a boy of barely 12 years, Prince Vasily, too young to command personally, but serving as a symbol of legitimacy. The decision to resist was collective. During the city council meeting, Batu's offer of surrender in exchange for life was rejected. For the people, opening the gates meant slavery. They would rather die fighting. Residents used whatever resources they had. Some chronicles claim walls were doused in icy water to make them slippery. Others recount small raids setting siege engines aflame before retreating behind the walls. These sorties, brief attacks common in medieval Europe, were believable in Kozel'sk as well. The resistance lasted nearly 7 weeks, far longer than in larger cities like Vladimir or Moscow. As the days passed, Mongol frustration grew. The army, exhausted from months of campaigning, was still bogged down in mud. Rain turned roads into quagmires, horses sank, and supply wagons were delayed. Chronicles also mention a betrayal by a man from a nearby village who revealed a dry path through the swamps, allowing part of the army to circumvent the city. This episode, though cited in Russian sources, remains debated by modern historians. Some consider it a symbolic explanation for how the Mongols finally completed the siege. Despite apparent Mongol advantages, the fight continued. Within the walls, hunger and disease spread. Outside, Generals Kadan and Buri were isolated by overflowing rivers, fragmenting the Mongol army. The terrain became an unexpected ally for the defenders. Religious conviction also played a crucial role. For the chroniclers, the populace viewed their sacrifice as martyrdom. Dying in defense of faith ensured eternal life. This was not just a military engagement, but a spiritual battle. That conviction explains how a small community stood firm against the most feared enemy in the world. Batu, increasingly impatient, realized this resistance was delaying his plans. The grand campaign toward Novgorod, a city coveted for its wealth and prestige, had to be postponed. The cost in time, resources, and morale was evident. Kozel'sk, a nearly insignificant city on the map, had achieved what others could not, slowing the Mongols and turning their advance into a bloody attrition. The question was no longer whether Kozel'sk would fall, but how much Batu would pay to breach its walls. The resistance was etched in blood, and the outcome would be remembered as one of the darkest and most admirable episodes of the invasion. After 49 days of siege, Kozel'sk was at its limit. Hunger and disease weakened the population, yet determination remained. For the inhabitants, surrender was not an option. It meant slavery or execution. The young Prince Vasily, barely 12, became the symbol of this obstinacy. Under his name, the city resolved to resist until the end. Batu realized that patience was exhausted, supplies were dwindling, and direct assaults had cost many lives. Lacking sufficient flammable materials, some Russian chronicles and later accounts by Western travelers like Plano Carpini mention a macabre method, using human fat obtained from prisoners to fuel fires. While no archaeological evidence confirms this, and historians consider it rumor amplified by oral tradition, It reflects the climate of horror accompanying the siege. Finally, Mongol engineers breached the walls. Combat shifted to the narrow streets, where inhabitants fought with whatever was at hand: broken swords, axes, even kitchen knives. Chronicles portray desperation more than tactics. Each corner became a battlefield. At that moment, the defenders chose their own finale. They set their homes and stores ablaze, filling the city with smoke, and launched a massive sortie. With fire at their backs and remaining weapons in hand, they charged the enemy camp. The surprise was immense. Some accounts claim thousands of Mongol casualties, though numbers are unverifiable. The assault caused chaos, siege engines destroyed, horses scattered, tents burned. None of the defenders survived, but their action stood as a final act of defiance. Batu's fury was relentless. After capturing the city, he ordered total massacre. Neither the elderly nor children were spared, and young Prince Vasily died with his people. Afterwards, the Khan had the walls razed and all traces of the settlement erased. The city's name was forbidden to be spoken. In Mongol memory, Kozel'sk became Sloy Gorod, the city of evil. For historians, the city represented more than heroism. By holding the horde for weeks, it altered the campaign's rhythm. The planned attack on Novgorod never took place. Fatigue, losses, and flooded rivers forced Batu to retreat south to reorganize his army. The episode presents a historical dilemma. Was Kozel'sk a mere tale of sacrifice, or did it truly alter Mongol plans? Evidence suggests both. The city fell, yet in doing so, it delayed the most feared force of the 13th century. Today, Kozel'sk is remembered as a symbol of defiance. A small city, led by a child, managed to wear down Genghis Khan's grandson and compel the Mongol Empire to halt its advance. Its story demonstrates that even against overwhelming power, resistance can change the course of events. In 1238, that message was written in fire, mud, and blood, and it still resonates as one of the most intense chapters of medieval Russian history. If this story of resistance moved you, subscribe to the channel to continue exploring episodes that changed history. Also, leave your comment. Do you believe the defense of Kozel'sk altered Batu's plans more than we imagine? Thank you for joining us on this journey into the past. The story of Kozel'sk reminds us that courage can outlast conquest. History often forgets the smallest voices, yet their echoes shape empires. For every empire that rose on blood, there were cities like Kozel'sk that stood to say no. They may have fallen, but their defiance became immortal. From the ashes of destruction, history writes its most human lines. The Siege of Kozel'sk stands as both a tragedy and a triumph of spirit. Even in defeat, its defenders claimed a moral victory that time could not erase. Their sacrifice forced history to pause, even for an empire that never stopped. Batu's army moved on, but its scars remained, etched not in stone, but in memory. Centuries later, the story still burns in chronicles, songs, and prayers. A 12-year-old boy led a city to immortality. And in that defiance, humanity found a mirror of its own resilience. Kozel'sk, the city of evil to its conquerors, the city of courage to history. Because even when empires fall silent, the brave never do.